You may have seen in my previous videos that I like to organize my performance or rehab journey. We've talked about the FAST principle, which means flexibility, activation, strength, and timing. Well, today let's talk about activation to make sure that you're turning on the right muscles for your training session so that you can get better results faster. My name is Shayan Safar. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, a board-certified orthopedic clinical specialist, and the owner of Unity Physical Therapy. I'm also a professional stuntman, breakdancer, and competitive martial artist. So what does activation mean? Activation means we're recruiting the correct muscles in order to do a certain task, lift, exercise, or even just day-to-day movements. This is a tricky phase because oftentimes our body always does what it's used to doing, which means if we're used to using our quads for everything, it's going to keep using our quads for everything. Our body is interesting in the sense that it likes to use these prime movers because they're very efficient. They generate a lot of torque so they can lift a lot of weight with little energy. But efficiency and effectiveness are a little different. To be effective means you're doing it well. Efficient means you're doing it with low energy. Since our body is always trying to save energy, oftentimes some of these stabilizer muscles don't get used, especially if we've been sedentary, if we're learning a new task, or if we're recovering from an injury. Our body tends to always shut those muscles off. This can lead to some problems when we're doing some repetitive movements because if we don't have that stabilization, not only are we likely increasing injury if we're lacking some stability, but we're actually getting some big performance leaks because if you're not getting stability, then that muscle output is not generating as much into the barbell or whatever task you're doing. So today let's talk about how do we activate the right muscles and what steps to ensure your success. So there's a lot of muscles in the body. To break down what muscles to do for each task would be very difficult. In some future videos we'll talk about specifically for what tasks, what muscles you want to turn on. But today we just want to talk about some general concepts. When we're trying to facilitate or recruit certain muscles, a couple things work really well. We have to think about this as kind of like a balance board or a soundboard, right? If you're a DJ or an orchestra, what you're trying to do is make sure that everything has the right volume so that it all sounds good together. If the trumpets are blasting too loud and the drums are not on enough, I want to turn the drum ups and bring the trumpets down. If we're trying to turn something up, there's a couple things that we can do. The best and my favorite thing is isometrics. Isometrics means you're doing a muscle contraction, but you're not moving it. So instead of, let's say, opening your hips up against a band, up and down, isometric is you just holding it with the resistance, that your muscles are just holding that for a lot of time, but there's no movement going on. This is really good for turning on the right muscles. As a matter of fact, I like to do these exercises all the time before I'm doing a lift. For instance, if I'm doing squats, I will do some glute isometrics just to get them fired up so that when I'm squatting, I know I'm using the right muscles. There's a couple other tricks for the nervous system to help turn on the right muscles, tapping the muscle, doing some quick stretching. Those techniques get a little bit more sophisticated, and again, I always think it's really good to do that with a trained clinician. But in general, I like isometrics to turn on muscles. The other side of the coin is, if I have a muscle that's overactive, I can also try and quiet that down so the balance gets a little bit more. Ways to quiet down muscles are things that we often like: massage, stretching, kind of relaxation techniques. Again, there's fancier ways to do this, but I think those are some really good ways of just kind of quieting that muscle down. So again, if we go back to, let's say, the squat analogy, and my back muscles are just working too hard because that's what they've been used to doing. I've been doing it with this form for a while. What I'll do oftentimes is that's where I like the foam roller or trigger point or even the hypervolt, something to kind of calm those muscles down. And then I'll do some isometrics to activate, let's say, my glutes in this case, so that when I go back to the squat, I'm kind of dialed in and everything's feeling really good. How long do I hold these isometrics for? It varies. The research shows that 5 seconds is pretty good, but sometimes there's some clinicians that have their patients hold it for a minute. To me, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just warming up before you do an exercise, like I like to do my activation for, I will just do it until I feel those muscles turn on, but don't want them to get fatigued. Again, let's say I'm trying to turn on my glutes, I don't want them to be burned out before I squat 300 pounds. Instead, I just want to feel that they're turned on so that when I'm doing the squats, I know that they're ready and dialed in. I'm trying to build this sort of activation pattern with my brain so that over time, let's say it's something that's not really second nature to me yet. It's not something I can just warm up with. It's something I need to work on for a couple of days, weeks. I will do 1 minute holds of that muscle, but a few times throughout the day. The reason I don't just do it 3 times in a row, like oftentimes we see like, hey, 3 sets, is because activation is about teaching the brain to be able to turn on this muscle when I want. It's a good idea sometimes to step away from that task, go do other things, and then when you come back, you practice, hey, how do I get that muscle turned on again? So that eventually you can just do it on the spot with maybe even less help with a band. You can just kind of flex that muscle right there and then. If you're trying to work on activating the right muscles and you're having some trouble with it, that's what I like to do. I like to go for 1 minute holds a couple times a day, let's say 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening. Now, if I've already kind of know how to turn that muscle on and I'm just warming up for an exercise, I'll just do it right before I do that exercise, and I'll kind of hold it just until I feel it burning, but not so much that it feels fatigued. If I'm trying to quiet down muscles, I haven't seen anything in the research that talks about a strict protocol on how much massage, stretching, or something to quiet down a muscle. In general, I kind of do it until I feel like my brain can still relax. If I feel like I'm getting distracted, that's usually when I kind of take a break from it, right? And I move on to activating the other muscle. Try that out before your next exercise. As always, consult with an MD, physical therapist, be safe, because I'm not there to watch you and make sure you're doing it well. I just want to expose you guys to these ideas so it's something you can think about in your performance and rehab journey. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, follow us at Unity PT LA on Instagram, and if you have more questions, go to our website, unityphysicaltherapy.com. Thank you guys.